Hey everyone, in this lesson we'll be looking at mass media and lawmaking. You've probably heard of media before, but in case you haven't, we'll touch on what that is and what it means and what different types of media are. And then at the end, like we've been doing in a lot of the lessons, we will focus on what mass media has to do with lawmaking. So what is mass media? Mass media is all this stuff that I know you guys see every day. TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, the internet, and other means of popular communication like social media, Twitter, Facebook, all those things. So mass media is anything that's giving you information in some way. Other word that we kind of need to know, or a term that we need to know before we go through this lesson, is public opinion. Public opinion just means the collection of all Americans' opinions on certain topics. So public opinion means like what people generally think about a different topic. Another thing that we need to understand before we go through this stuff is political opinions. A lot of our opinions deal with politics and how we kind of see things about the government and what they should and should not do. It's not something you're born with, those political opinions. You get them from a variety of different places. A variety of different things and people influence what your political opinions are. It could be your neighborhood, it could be your parents, your grandparents, your teachers, school you go to, the education that you receive, the friends that you talk to, your different experiences and relationships in your community. Those are all things that can affect how you see the world and what you think about government and how things should be. Another thing that influences that, though, is mass media and what you see on TV, what you hear on the radio, what you see on Facebook, what you read on Twitter, what you read in an article online. All of those things influence your political opinions as well. So usually our political opinions fall on this chart that you see up here. Most of us are somewhere on this chart. We're either way to the left, which means you're a little bit more liberal, or way to the right, which means you're a little more conservative. And you can see on the chart that those mean different things. And some of the political parties we talked about earlier in the pod are on this screen as well. If you're liberal, that means you're a little bit more to the left on things, and you're probably a Democrat. And if you're a conservative, you're probably a little bit more to the right on things, or you're a Republican. And you can see what each of these terms mean on this chart. If you're in the middle and you kind of don't really identify with either political party or being liberal or conservative, you're considered moderate, which means that you're in the middle, and maybe you kind of think like a Democrat in some issues and like a Republican on other issues. A lot of stuff. What's mass media have to do with all of that? Mass media is in charge of getting all of that information out to us. They're the ones that are what's called a medium, which means they're in the middle. They're the thing that transmits or gives us the information about what the government is doing and what's going on in our local communities and the world around us. So when we need information, that's where we go. We go to mass media, and it's their job or their role to report that information to us. So what does it have to do with opinion? Usually newspapers and TV shows and things like that, a lot of their articles and things like that are going to be about what's going on in society at that time and what the big things are in society. And they're usually going to be about things that need like immediate attention. So that's why sometimes you see just one or two kind of big news stories going on, because those are the things that are kind of seen by the public in general as the most important or the most maybe interesting even, and those are the things that are put on the news more. What about the media and politics? So we talked about how Americans, all of us tend to kind of think certain ways on things, and we tend to kind of be liberal or conservative or kind of in the middle. News is no different. The media influences the criteria by which the public evaluates political leaders. So the media looks at our political leaders and the people running for office, and they kind of decide where they fall on that spectrum. So that's why you might hear people on TV call certain people in the government liberal or certain people in the government conservative. So they're identifying these people with those terms, which influences our opinion about those people. The other thing that they can kind of do is they get to decide which stories that we see and which events that we hear the most about. So each news agency or each type of media, they get to decide the stories that they push more. If they think that a certain story is more important, they'll cover it a little bit more. If they see a news story is not as important, then they won't cover it as much. So their politics sometimes get in the way of what we see on the news. So why are they good? Why is it good to have the mass media? The media is known as what's called a watchdog, which means the media is there and the government knows it. The government knows that the media is watching them just like a watchdog does, and making sure that the government doesn't get out of control or kind of do anything wrong. If they do, then the media is going to know about that and they're going to report it. If they report it, we are going to know about it, and usually, depending on the issue, that person who committed the act in government or did something wrong is probably going to be in a good deal of trouble. Even if they're not in trouble, it might kind of ruin the reputation and might make a lot of people in America think differently about that person. So people in the government know that they have to kind of act accordingly because the media is watching them, and the media will report to us if that person is doing something wrong. Candidates also use the media a little bit, though. So sometimes you'll see people that are running for elections on these TV shows. So they might focus on one candidate, and that candidate might go on TV and try and get your vote in some way. Now, like we talked about a little bit earlier, sometimes there's a little bit of bias in the news. Because some news agencies kind of lean a certain way. So some news agencies tend to kind of report things that are more for conservative opinions, and some news agencies tend to report things that are a little bit more for liberal opinions. So they tend to sometimes be biased, not super biased, but that's why it's good to just kind of look at multiple news sources rather than just one or two. Because if you're just looking at one or two, you might not be getting the full picture. So if you're reading about an article or a news story or researching it in some way, it's good to look at a variety of options before you kind of make up your mind about a news story. So a summary of it all. The media shapes public opinion on political issues, and they influence policy agenda. Because they get to decide kind of what we see and what we hear. So our opinions about issues and what we see on the news is shaped by the media. We make our opinions and we come up with what we think about things based about what we see on TV shows that cover the news, or what we read in the paper, or what we see on Twitter or Facebook. So all these things kind of shape our opinion on things. In today's day and age, print media, which means like newspapers and magazines, you don't see them as much. Most of the ways that we get news are either through the TV or on the internet. And there's a lot of money in that. So sometimes the news kind of acts in a way that more so they're in ways that they're trying to gain a profit rather than really thinking about what's best. So these are all things you just got to keep in mind while you're watching the news, and that's why I kind of said that it's a good idea to look at a lot of different news sources rather than just one. So what's it got to do with you? Like I said, just be careful when you look to the media for answers. Any kind of media, whether that be CNN, Fox News, the New York Times, your friend on Twitter, whatever. You really got to think about where it's coming from. You got to look at multiple sources before you really make up your mind. That's why it says inform yourself on politics through multiple mediums. That means multiple ways of getting information. And try and double check information, and just don't believe everything you hear. I'm not saying that the news is lying to you or anything like that, but sometimes you just got to see it from multiple perspectives to get the full picture on things. So as always, make sure you join us in class on Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you have questions and need help, please contact me. My information is up on the screen. If you do need help, please make sure to contact me. I'll say it again. I'd be happy to help you, and I have plenty of time to help you. Don't think you're bothering me. Before you leave, make sure you answer the questions that are below my face. If you have any questions, again, contact me. If not, good luck.